Hi there, and welcome to the sideboard here at the StarCityGames.com Invitational in Richmond. I'm Ken Crocker, here with Jeff Hoogland. How you doing, Jeff?
I'm doing good, Ken.
So today you brought a little spicy number that features a lot of the new cards from Dragons of Tarkir. So why don't we start talking about what you got? You got like a blue-red Dragons burn
counterspell type deck. I think this is the most cards I've ever played week one out of a third set in a format. There's a lot of really powerful selections we gained with Dragons of Tarkir.
Sure, with the set just coming out today, I assume you did some testing for this. How did that go before we get into the deck?
It felt pretty good in testing against all of the decks that were powerful in the previous standard season with the slight upgrades that we expected them to get, and it more importantly was very consistent in what it was wanting to do. Because we're only 2 colors, the mana base in this deck is rock solid as opposed to some of the 3 and 4 color decks from the previous season.
All right, so let's talk about some of the newer cards that you used here. We have our old dragons, we have our Stormbreath Dragon. I mean, we've seen that a million times before. But we got 4 copies of Thunderbreak Regent. So tell me about this card right here.
Thunderbreak Regent, I think, could quite possibly be the breakout card this weekend. It's very powerful in everything a deck that wants to push damage wants to be doing. A 4-power evasive creature is good on its own, but this card is almost always guaranteed 3 points of damage. So it kind of has pseudo haste in the fact that even if it dies right away, it's still doing something to them.
All right, so we got the red dragon to push through some damage, and you got 2 copies of Icefall Regent. So we got 6 Regents in the deck, but what does Icefall Regent do for you in this deck?
So because we're kind of a counter burn deck, our removal in general misses some of the larger creatures in the format. So Icefall Regent is both an evasive threat at our top end as well as a way to interact with things like Siege Rhinos and other things like that in game 1 without having to commit a bunch of dead cards like a full playset of Roasts in the main deck.
Fair enough. Well, you do in fact have the Roast in the sideboard, but in the main, you have 4 Anticipate. So Anticipate probably brings the whole deck together. Is that true?
It's really just this fantastic card selection in that, it's what card selection always does. You keep an opening hand with 2 lands in this Anticipate, and it's the 3rd land if you need it, or it's another spell if your first draw steps are the 2 lands to fill out your hand. So just really powerful selection. It also gives us cheap spells to play to fill the graveyard for our dig-through times, so we're able to more consistently cast those on turn 4.
And then finally, when we're talking about dragons, we're going to talk about Slumgar Scorn, which is basically counterspell in this deck, right? Because you have how many dragons?
We've got 9 dragons in the main and a 10th in the sideboard from when we really need it to be counterspell. The important thing to point out about Scorn, though, is that in addition to working with the dragon in your hand or on the battlefield, it's also just very good as a force spike on turns 2 through 4 in most matchups. So that really gives you, the first 10 to 11 cards of your deck to find one of those 9 dragons to turn it into actual counterspell later in the game.
So you're just trying to catch some people off guard here with the Slumgar Scorn, and then later in the game, it's going to be actual counterspell as opposed to force spike.
Correct, and even if people are playing around Slumgar Scorn as force spike in the early game, that means their game plan is going to be slower, which means our aggressive burn and flying strategy is going to be more potent against them.
Alrighty, well, we also have 1 in the main and 1 sideboard. We have Haven of the Spirit Dragon, which brings the whole dragon motif together, I guess. So what are these 2 lands doing for you in this deck here?
Let me describe a card to you. If I said you get to play this land that makes a colorless mana, and in the late game it says tap, sack, draw a Stormbreath Dragon.
That's just pretty good to me,
You'd probably
yeah.
play that card, right? That's what Haven of the Spirit Dragon says. It's because our mana base is so consistent, being only 2 colors, we're able to play colorless lands like that. So that allows us to play more lands, but not flood out as much in the longer game when we want more action. The additional Haven in the sideboard supplements for when we board into bigger cards, like a 4th copy of Stormbreath Dragon and our pair of Dragon Lord's Prerogative.
So we got Dragon Lord's Prerogative. I assume that's for the control matchups. We get to draw a bunch of cards with it, can't be countered.
Yeah, uncounterable draw 4 is kind of like a nail in the coffin against a lot of the control decks. It supplements our digs very nicely as additional card advantage. It's also fairly good against the more grindy decks like Abzan and things like that, where they just want the game to go long. Picking up 4 extra cards is a good way to bury them.
All right, fair enough. So we got the rest of your sideboard, pretty standard stuff. You got your Disdainful Strokes, your Anger of the Gods. So what were you expecting to face here at the Invitational with this deck?
The 2 decks that I really want to play against are the aggressive aggro decks like Abzan aggro and Mono Red aggro, as well as the more controlling decks in the field like Blue-Black Control and Sultai Control. The fact that all of our removal in the main deck, except for the 1 Roast, doubles as reach, gives us a very potent control matchup because we're able to just burn them out in the late game. We also, between the digs and the Dragon Lord's Prerogative, can keep up with them on card quantity.
So basically, the whole deck's just trying to burn everyone out, and you got enough burn between the actual burn and the fire-breathing dragons to take care of anybody you need.
Correct, and your digs oftentimes in the late game are just dig into Crater's Claws plus Lightning Strike, kill them.
Fair enough. Well, Jeff, good luck for the rest of the Invitational. Thanks for taking the time to side us in here in the sideboard. I appreciate it.
Thanks for having me, Ken.
All right, thank you. Stick around for more of the Invitational action here to come at the StarCityGames.com Invitational in Richmond, Virginia.